Failing Psychology, where I'm going to be going over some of the key topics in the AQA A-level specification and hopefully making them nice and clear for you. My little puppy. So today we are going to be looking at parental investment, and that is an A2 topic on the current AQA specification. So the key theory which is linked to parental investment is Trivers, and he has a sexual differences theory. He believes that there are two main differences between men and women in parental investment, and these are rearing effort and mating effort. So let's start with the men. And remember, this is based on evolutionary theory, so not my opinion here. So Trivers argues that men have a really high mating effort. This is because, according to evolutionary theory, the key aim of men is to reproduce and have their genetics passed on to the next generation. That is the sole aim of a man. Not my opinion, evolutionary theory. So, men are seen as particularly promiscuous, and that's basically a fancy word for saying they have sex with lots of different people, and they're quite free to have sex with multiple partners. So men have a very high mating effort. Because men want to pass on their genetics, they are quite happy to have sex with partners very early on, and they're very driven to have sex with females. Therefore, they are very likely to have a high mating effort because they want to reproduce to pass on their genetics. Now, if we look at women, however, they are seen to have a very low mating effort. This is because women biologically are set up very differently, whereas men have unlimited sperm. They can have as much sex as they want, use up all that sperm, it's not going to run out. Women have a finite amount of eggs, which are their reproductive, which they use to reproduce. So, for women, they can only get pregnant between their periods and menopause. Sorry, Freddie's eating in the background there. So therefore, they are a lot more fussy about who they have sex with. Women have to be pregnant for 9 months. Okay, so that is a huge investment, and therefore they're not just going to have sex with anyone. They are only going to have sex with someone they think has great genetics that can be passed on to their own children. So now we need to have a look at rearing effort. And rearing effort, again, is very different for men and women. So women have a very high rearing effort. This is because they have to physically carry the baby, and the baby itself is actually even taking nutrients from the mother's body as a fetus. In caveman times, women would also have to be the one to breastfeed the baby to keep it alive. And in terms of evolutionary theory, the human brain has evolved as we've got more intelligent, and our brains have actually got much bigger. However, the birth canal area that the baby's head comes out of hasn't quite evolved at the same speed. So it's actually argued that the human head is about 1 centimetre too big to fit through the woman's birth canal at the moment. So there's a huge risk for the mother. And to overcome this, nature's been very clever, and babies are actually born the most premature they've ever been. So that puts even more rearing effort onto the mother. Now, men, on the other hand, have a very low rearing effort. Now, this is because once they have passed on their genetics, according to evolutionary theory, their work is done. So Simmons has a very famous quote, "All men need is a couple of seconds of copulation and a teaspoon of semen, and that's their job done. They can go have a little holiday in Malaga, lie on a sun lounger, and according to evolutionary theory, that's their only biological effort they need to make for that baby to survive." So very, very different. Now, there are some other aspects we can talk about for our AO1, and one of these things is something called cuckoldry. Now, this is something that men have evolved, and it is a fear of bringing up a child with somebody else's genetics. So, for example, if you had a husband and a wife, and the wife had an affair and slept with someone else, and that husband didn't know, and he thought that he'd got his wife pregnant, and he brought up that child, that would be a man's worst fear, according to evolutionary theory, because he's putting a lot of effort, but he's not passing on his genetics to the next generation. And the fear of this is called cuckoldry. Now, I hear you saying, hang on a minute, what about stepdads? What about adoption? And these are really big problems for Triver's theory, and that's something we'll look at for our AO2. So, that should be most of the AO1 that you would need for a question on this topic. Any questions? Ask them below, and look out for the AO2 and AO3 video for this topic. This has been Explaining Psychology.